We have information regarding the new runes that will be coming in Phase 2 of Season of Discovery on February 8th. In the recent patch rundown, Blizzard teased 2 runes per class, one for the belt engraving slot and one for your boots too, bringing us up to a total of 5 engravings. I do want to mention there has been a lot of data mining going on regarding runes, but I want to focus today on the ones which we know are confirmed. Data mines have shown it is likely that each engraving slot to come in the next phase will contain 4 runes, as we've seen on average in Phase 1. On top of that, data mines have found both helm and wrist engraving slots, which are likely to be released alongside Phase 3 of Season of Discovery sometime later this year. And looking back to how things were in Phase 1, there was a lot of data mining then, and a bunch of the stuff on there ended up being unused or just testing grounds or just things for future runes. So again, today it's going to be focusing on the confirmed, which means we have 2 runes to look at per class. And of course, as future runes become known, I'll definitely talk about them too. But with all that said, let's begin. Warriors get Rallying Cry, which will be a raid-wide cooldown that grants all allies within 40 yards 15% max health for 10 seconds. It's like a mini version of Last Stand, and given its range and the fact that it's raid-wide, this is quite a powerful defensive cooldown. I will say with the content we've seen so far in Season of Discovery, these big raid-wide defensives don't really have a place in the game yet. How many priests have you seen rock Power Word Barrier or Paladins with Divine Sacrifice? Not that many. Really depends on how Gnomeregan is tuned and whether there are encounters that demand such cooldowns, but it is a decent option in PvP, but then again it depends what else warriors get for this rune. Blood Surge is near enough a copy-paste to what we got in Wrath of the Lich King, where it's found in the Fury talent tree. It gives certain abilities the chance to make your next slam instant and cost no rage. Interestingly, this is a rune that's quite tailored towards a Fury style of gameplay, as it doesn't say it procs from Mortal Strike on the tooltip. Also, I wonder whether Quick Strike will be able to proc Blood Surge, given that it benefits from effects which improve Heroic Strike. Slam is an ability that typically isn't used much in vanilla, but it does do a fair bit of damage, so this should be another solid proc for warriors to look forwards to keep them towards the top of the DPS. For Paladins, first up we have Sheath of Light. This is going to give some of your spells some attack power scaling, so think things such as Exorcism, Holy Wrath, Hammer of Wrath next phase, those kind of things. Secondly, it also makes your critical heals heal for an additional 60% over 12 seconds. Now that is a pretty big number. Even though this rune at a first glance is tailored towards more damage dealing playstyles, there's no reason that you shouldn't consider this on a Holy Paladin, where critical strike is already an amazing stat thanks to your illumination talent. I mean, baseline, every character in the game has at least some strength, so you can run in a melee for a bit of extra spell power every 1 minute. This seems as though it's a very powerful rune that's going to fit into a lot of playstyles. Even if you're a tank, you might consider taking this because you'll have a bunch of strength on your gear and it will massively improve things such as Consecration. Guarded by the Light is kind of a strange rune to exist. It makes it so when you hit a target with a melee weapon, you gain 5% of your max mana per 3 seconds over 15 seconds, but then it halves the effectiveness of a bunch of your healing spells. So this is kind of a reworked version of the same talent from Wrath of the Lich King, once again. The thing is, Paladins already have a mana regeneration effect through the Hand of Reckoning rune, but Hand of Reckoning needs you to be taking damage to get mana back. Guarded by the Light doesn't, so I have to assume this rune will be good for a variety of things, including tanking lower level content where you don't really take enough damage to get mana back, boosting, dungeon farming, or just a quality of life rune so you don't go ever again when you're leveling. It's probably even going to be decent for Retribution, to be honest. Next, we have a very exciting rune for the melee hunter enjoyers in Melee Specialist. Raptor Strike now has a 3-second cooldown and is instant, and Raptor Strike has a 30% chance to not incur its cooldown. You can pretty much ignore the Mongoose Bite of this ability until they buff it in some way, because it's just really bad. The big thing not to miss out on here is that Raptor Strike is instant, not next melee swing. So imagine how Wing Clip works, where it just goes off straight away as soon as you press the button. That'll be what Raptor Strike will be doing. Raptor Strike, of course, already goes great alongside Flanking Strike, where you get this stacking debuff that increases the damage of Raptor Strike. Also, Raptor Strike's only on a 3-second cooldown. This is going to be coming up so often, I don't think you're even going to be melee weaving anymore. You're straight up just going to be a melee class. On top of this, Raptor Strike is off the global cooldown, down, so suddenly Melee Hunter is going from kind of memey to a proc-heavy and fast-paced playstyle. You'll definitely want to get a Wind Fury and/or Wild Strikes now as a Hunter, and for warriors and rets out there, you definitely just got some more competition on weapons. The only real concern here is mana, but some data-mined runes point towards aiding this situation, such as the potential new Invigoration rune for your boots. The second confirmed rune is a modified version of Trap Launcher. This does a whole bunch of things, such as separating the cooldowns on your fire and frost traps, allowing the use of traps in combat, and allowing you to fire your traps within 40 yards of your current position. So to be honest, I think this will be mainly used by PvPers, making the most of your frost traps. Think of firing a frost trap on a small entryway some 40 yards away, or scatter trapping a freezing trap whilst you're in combat without having to use feign death. These scenarios are both pretty strong. Fire traps are just very average at the moment. They don't scale with attack power in any way, and until they do, they're going to remain very average. For example, your best rank of Immolation Trap at 40 is going to do 340 damage, and Explosive Trap a combined 275 on AoE. Same issues with Volley that Hunter has in that it does arcane damage and doesn't scale. So all in all, Trap Launcher looks pretty cool, gonna be for PvP though at the moment. The Shaman is the only class to have had 3 runes teased. First is Spirit of the Alpha. It's a single target buff that increases threat generated by 45%, and I'm assuming this can be buffed on anyone, an ally, or yourself. This is a very powerful rune. Who needs the 30% threat reduction from Salvation on the whole raid when you can just have an Alpha tank who's putting out 45% bonus threat instead? In fact, Alpha is situationally just better than Salvation. On a single target encounter, tanks having plus 45% more threat is amazing. Then again, on multi-target fights or in dungeons, it really depends on each tank and how much AoE threat their kit is capable of putting out in the first place. Very powerful rune. I'd expect to some extent Shamans may be expected to take this, depending on how many tanks you're bringing to any given instance. Next is Maelstrom Weapon, a very famous talent from Wrath of the Lich King. When you deal damage with a melee attack, you have a chance to gain a buff that stacks up to 5 times. Each stack will reduce the cast time of a bunch of spells shown on the tooltip here by 20%. So in other words, get 5 stacks and one of these spells will become instant cast. Now, to be honest, we're going to be getting into another one of these comments about a bunch of these spells don't scale with anything, such as Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning. So for the most part, I see Maelstrom Weapon being used on Lava Burst or on healing. It does depend how fast you're getting up to 5 stacks though, and I don't think Enhancement has mana issues anymore either because of a shamanistic rage, so hopefully this is just a good DPS increase. And the third rune is the very much anticipated Two-Handed Mastery rune, which is more or less just 30% attack speed at all times when wielding a two-handed weapon. And this is I mean, it's going to go on your chest rune slot, so it's going to be competing with dual wield directly, and dual wield spec has 10% hit chance for melee attacks and spells, and will make Storm Strike hit with both weapons. So to be honest, this doesn't seem very good. I was expecting the two-handed rune to have attack speed and hit at least, and the other data-mined runes we know of don't seem to be adding much else for two-handed enhance either. Time will tell whether this one ends up being good. I mean, this is a lot of attack speed, but two-handed enhance needs more than just attack speed to be anyway decent in my opinion. First up for Druids is Eclipse, just not a version of the spell you've seen before. So Starfire will increase the crit chance of your next 2 Wrath spells by 30%, stacking up to 4 times, and the opposite will also be true, so Wrath will increase the crit chance of your next 2 Starfires by 30%, stacking up to 4 times. So in practice, you're going to be casting one of these spells until your stacks are capped out, then you'll start casting the other one and alternate between the two. On top of that, both spells gain 70% spell knockback prevention. Interesting talent this one, with a bunch of synergies to consider, such as will Star Surge grant both spells a stack, or just the one which you currently have active. Also, all this extra crit chance is amazing for some talents you'll be getting, such as Vengeance and Nature's Grace, so this should scale quite well. It is looking a bit more hopeful for the laser chickens in Phase 2. There is also a datamined rune, and I'm not going to cover many of the datamined runes, but I really hope this is true for Boomkin. It's called Dream State. This makes it so spell crits grant mana regen and increase the target's nature damage taken by 20%. So remember, Curse of Elements, very ironically, does not consider nature damage an element and it's not present on it. So this is kind of a workaround to that issue. Also, you're going to be Elemental Shaman's best friend, so very cool stuff for balanced druids here so far. The second confirmed rune for druids is a powerhouse of an ability called King of the Jungle. This transforms your Tiger's Fury from kind of a meme into a serious DPS cooldown. Now Tiger's Fury will increase physical damage by 15% for 6 seconds, in addition to instantly restoring 60 energy. It's no longer on global cooldown either, but it will have a 30-second cooldown. This has to be one of, if not the most powerful rune they have shown for Phase 2. And how fitting, King of the Jungle for the PvP phase in Stranglethorn Vale, right? But yeah, this pushes ferals hard in all areas of content. It's going to get your Savage Roar going faster, allow for some big ferocious bites, and lead to some nasty burst windows in PvP. I just hope Blizzard haven't forgot about the feral tanks out there, because I haven't seen too many of them in Phase 1, and the other runes that have been datamined don't really lean towards that playstyle too much either, but we will see on that. Rogues. Here's your AoE tanking ability, Shuriken Toss. It deals damage to your target and up to 4 nearby other targets. Well, that's better than tab targeting, isn't it? From data mining, it says this ability has an energy cost of 60 and a 25-yard range, so you're also going to be pulling with this ability too then. I do wonder how this is going to interact with Blade Flurry though. Is there some kind of insane AoE potential to be had here? Next, we're getting Master of Subtlety, so attacks made while stealthed and for 6 seconds afterwards cause 10% more damage. There's probably going to be a better option here for PvE, where realistically Vanish on a 5-minute cooldown may not even be up for every single boss. For PvP, when you're resetting combat and jumping in and out of stealth a lot, this seems fairly decent. Warlocks are getting Invocation, which makes it so when refreshing a number of damage over time effects when they have 6 seconds or less left on their duration, they will deal a single instance of their periodic damage. So this is kind of based off the pandemic talent from Mists of Pandaria. This made it so when you refreshed a dot, it would add the remaining duration of the previous dot to the new one. Then in Warlords of Draenor, they added this interaction to every dot in the game, not just affliction locks. Now, the point of this was convenience and snapshotting during that particular time period. Invocation, however, just moves the ideal time to refresh from when the dot expires to when it has 6 seconds left. So really, this rune is just kind of unusable, and I'm not sure what it's supposed to be for. Still, there are more runes to be seen this phase, so maybe it's part of a bigger picture, which is also what I said for Affliction in Phase 1, by the way. Maybe the bigger picture starts to happen at level 50. Warlock's also got Dance of the Wicked, and I think this is pretty good. It gives you and your demon a chance to dodge equal to your critical strike chance, and when you crit, you both regenerate 2% max mana. So here's the thing about Warlock tanks. They're going to have a bunch of damage mitigation due to armor, and if you go down the demonology tree, you're going to have some insane passive mitigation through Master Demonologist, as well as Soul Link. But your chance to dodge is kind of non-existent, and you cannot parry either. So this rune is going to give Warlocks some mitigation, which other tanks will get by default, both through their itemization and their talents. Also, you'll be able to go down the destruction tree and pick up things which make your fire spells better, which in turn is good for threat generation. And if I know one thing about vanilla tanking, it's that threat is king. Priest is next up, and their first new DPS rune is Mind Spike. Different from other versions of Mind Spike we've seen in WoW though, in that it's a 1.5 second cast spell that increases the crit chance of Mind Blast by 30%, stacking up to 3 times. Okay, so hopes have not exactly been renewed for Shadow Priest because of this rune. Now, spells that can crit are objectively better for PvE than spells which cannot in vanilla, and that's always been the case. However, Shadow Priests in vanilla were not designed in a way where it was expected that their abilities would be critting a lot. As such, their talents don't support this kind of rune well whatsoever. Just as a comparison, there's a talent in Wrath of the Lich King called Shadow Power, and this increases the critical strike damage bonus of priest spells by 100%, and they would kind of need something along this line to exist in Classic if they want a non-dot playstyle. So I still think we need to see more for Shadow Priest before they start to do anything other than utility in PvE. If you tend to heal a bit more on the priest, however, or just PvP for that matter, priests are also getting pain suppression. So if there was ever any doubt there was going to be a healer that was better than priest in PvP, let's just stop thinking about that right now, shall we? Pain suppression is a huge defensive cooldown that allows your target to live through practically anything for 8 seconds. Imagine if you go discipline next phase, you can have penance, prayer of mending, pain suppression, and power infusion. That is an absolutely unreal toolkit for classic WoW. Last but not least, we have the Mage. Missile Barrage is making its way back to classic from Wrath of the Lich King. Finally, arcane missiles will have their time to shine. Your arcane blast has a 40% chance and Frostbolt and Fireball a 20% chance to make your next arcane missiles free and basically channel in half the time, so a second and a half. This should push the power of all aspects of Arcane Mage a decent amount, and it's just a satisfying button to press when it comes up. And I didn't even mention the best bit yet, which is when this procs, Arcane Missiles will also have its mana cost reduced by 100%. So this is just a really powerful rune. Mages are also getting Chronostatic Preservation, a very interesting ability. From data mining, it appears as though it has a 2-second cast time, where you store healing for the next 15 seconds or until recast. So upon the timer expiring or recasting, it does an instant burst of healing, which will be considered all of Arcane, Fire or Frost for interactions with other spells or talents. I'm thinking there is more to this than you can initially see. After all, why would a healing ability need to explicitly benefit from all mage spell schools? Maybe to benefit from bonus crit from talents perhaps? It's a tricky one to estimate till I really get a chance to use it. And those are all the currently confirmed runes for Phase 2, along with 1 or 2 of the data mines. If you made it to the end of the video, drop a sub on the channel as I'll be covering all the major Season of Discovery news, runes and updates right here. And finally, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.